Hello, and welcome to Season 5 of the Your Neurodiverse Relationship podcast. I'm Jodi, Carlton, your host, and I'm a neurodiverse relationship expert. But like so many of you, I've been on my own journey of discovering and understanding neurodiversity, both in my personal life with my family members and even myself, and professionally as a therapist and now relationship coach to people around the world. I'm often asked, can neurodiverse partner relationships actually work? And the answer is absolutely they can. Just like any relationship, there are core variables that influence whether or not you'll thrive as a couple. Neurodiverse relationships are no different, but they have the added layer of being neurodiverse, where one or both partners is neurodivergent. So this season, I've got a lineup of couples and partners who are in neurodiverse relationships that are working. They get real personal with me about the challenges they have faced and how they've overcome those challenges in their relationships. Let's get started. Hello, Ashley and Randall. I want to just thank you for being on the show. And I'm super excited about interviewing you two in particular, because Randy, you and I have known each other for a long time. I think we first met, it would have been about 8th grade, right? I think we were both band nerds.
Correct.
Yes, in the trumpet section. So what, 13 years old, I guess, something like that.
Correct.
Yeah. So you and I were really good friends in high school. We had a kind of a group of friends. And so I've known Randy, but we lost touch as adults until, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. So anyway, I'm really excited about interviewing you two in particular. So can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure. Again, my name is Randall, and I was basically a late diagnosed about 47 years old, which was 5 years ago, and found out most likely on the autism spectrum. And it's been quite a journey to find those things out and then figure out how to adjust my life and adjust some of my behaviors and understand the impacts of that autism on our relationship and on my relationship with my parents, my siblings, my kids, those things.
Thank you for that. And Ashley, tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Ashley, and I'm neurotypical, but I do have some sensory processing issues. But other than that, we're pretty neurotypical and diverse. We've been married for 12 years now, and there were those earlier years. It's hard to explain because we connected on such a level, I feel. But then there were some things, especially even after a while, and I'm like, am I going crazy here? And since we learned that he was autistic, it's helped our relationship, and I feel like it's helped me too.
So can you share a little bit more about those things where you're saying, am I going crazy here? What are some of those things that you started noticing and feeling confused about?
One example, we were at Orange Beach, and it was before the diagnosis, a little while before it, I think. And my mom was also there with us, and we were getting ready to leave the room to eat. And I had this big update on my phone that we had been waiting for, we were excited about, and we'd been waiting for it for a while. And it came in right before we left, but it was like we were just about to leave, and he got pretty upset because he was not getting to go eat. And like I stand up and we're ready to walk out the door, and he's like, I gotta make a sandwich. And so he got started making him a sandwich while my mom and I are waiting on him to leave to go eat. And I was like, sweetie, what are you doing? That was one of those moments. And he didn't understand why I was upset. And I really didn't understand his perspective on it. But then after we learned, that was definitely one of our stories we looked back on, and we were like, and laugh about it. We laugh about it now.
I can see
But we
that.
could totally see both of us in that with the new lens that we had.
And I think when couples get that clarity, like with a diagnosis, and they can look back, and so many couples have that light bulb of, oh, that's what was going on there. So Randy, what was happening for you? What do you remember about that experience from your perspective?
But yeah, so we had a plan, and the plan was, hey, we're going to leave and we're going to go eat, and we're going to do it at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
And when things were not happening at the time we agreed on, that created a lot of stress for me. And one of the things I struggle with is eating. and I can't be hungry. I have to eat when I'm hungry at that very moment, to the point that I've actually learned to carry food around with me everywhere I go. And
Mm.
so that's one of the life hacks that we've learned to use. But in this case, that really did create a lot of stress for me, because then all of a sudden, from knowing when I'm going to go eat, it became more nebulous. And now I don't know when I'm going to eat, and I don't know when we're going to leave. And now the plan has been derailed. And now I understand why I always felt that way. And now
Mhm.
she understands why. And of course, now I understand more about the stress it causes her.
Mhm.
It's helped me understand her a lot more too.
So the
Because I'm thinking,
difficulty in pivoting, like the spontaneous pivot when something changes is pretty hard for you. But what about can you share a little bit more about the eating and why it's important? What is it like for you if you get hungry and you need to eat? What is that? You said I have to eat right then. What's happening for you? What happens if you can't?
yeah, it's really not a good situation if I can't.
You
But
get
one of the
hangry?
things I struggle with is I feel hungry 100% of the time.
Oh,
So if
okay.
I'm awake, I feel hungry. And of course, you don't really understand what your body is trying to tell you. Is it because I'm hungry, or is it because I'm anxious? But for whatever reason, food is one of the things that brings me comfort.
Mm.
So as long as I can feel like I have enough food, then I feel okay.
That's so interesting that you should say that you feel hungry all the time because with sensory and actually you mentioned that you have some sensory processing differences as well. With autism in particular, with sensory processing, the threshold is real high, like unusually high, or it's unusually low for people. So what I'm hearing from you is that I feel hungry all the time. So your threshold for hunger is really low. It just doesn't take much at all for your brain to communicate to you, I need to eat. Whereas other people, like my daughter, who's autistic, is at the other end of that, where her threshold is very high. So she never feels hungry and she never knows when she's full. She never knows when she's hungry, and just like you, eats on a schedule. And it's interesting because I think both you mentioned how food is comfort for you. It is for her as well, but she also doesn't know when to stop sometimes, or whether she's still hungry or how much to eat. And so sometimes she struggles to eat enough. Whereas, do you ever struggle to eat too much? Do you end up just eating all the time, or have you found that you just stick to that routine?
I do struggle with eating too much. What I have to do is, because I eat so often, I have to eat really small meals for the most part, or really small
Mhm.
snacks. So
Mhm.
that's the way I balance that. Because after I was past 30, I started gaining weight because I wanted to eat
Haven't
all the
we all?
time. Then I realized, okay, portion control is the key.
Mhm.
So I can still eat whenever I want. I just have to eat something small.
So, actually, what's that been like for you as his wife? And that, yeah, I can imagine that might have been confusing, like when you were in Orange Beach. What's that been like for you now that you understand, or even before you understood that routine or those needs that he has around the schedule like that with eating?
After, I don't know exactly when, if it was after the diagnosis or if it was just after the Orange Beach incident, we'll call it. But I learned early, if he felt like he needed to eat, just leave him alone. Let him do whatever he needs to feel okay in that moment. Because after that, actually, I think it was in like the last few years, we went to my mom's for something. We were having something. I don't remember what the occasion was.
I actually think it was Thanksgiving. I think we were going over there early so that you guys could start cooking for Thanksgiving. And she
No.
was going to make us breakfast.
Oh, okay. Is that we were going over there? We thought we were going to have food shortly after getting there. But we got there and she had not even started cooking. She wasn't even in the kitchen. And he was like tense about it. And he was like, I got to go home and get something to eat. And before I would have been encouraging him to, that's rude. What am I going to say to my mom? But I've explained to my mom so she understands a little more. I just tell her he just needed to go back and get him a snack and she's okay. And she actually helps us run interference a little bit with my family because it's just a little bit off topic, but related to that is we've learned when we go to functions like that to sometimes go separately, drive separately. So
Mhm.
that way he can come as late as he wants, he can come later, or he can leave when it feels too much to him. But then he's not putting pressure on me to leave before I'm ready. But that's the main thing I've learned. Let him do whatever he needs to do. And then he does it himself. If we go anywhere, he prepares his bag with all of his snacks and drinks and everything that he needs. I just have to leave him to it, basically.
I'm glad you shared that, Ashley, because that whole holiday getting together with family or any social function really can be a real tricky thing for couples when you have different levels of tolerance for the social, the atmosphere, the noise, the smells, the chaos, all of it. And that's something that a lot of couples struggle with. And we're taping this as we're about to go into our Thanksgiving here in the United States. But one of the things, but all season long, we have these gatherings, all year long, we have these gatherings. And it is such a useful tool and strategy to go drive separately. That way you have the escape route. Nobody's feeling pressured to leave. Nobody's feeling pressured to stay. And it's so important to have that outlet because otherwise, when you don't have it, then the anxiety can just be so much worse and so much harder. And the other thing I wanted to say is I love that you've brought your mom into this understanding, sharing with her some so that she can understand more about what Randy needs. And like you said, run interference. Because sometimes other family members, it's not as easy to talk about these things with other families who probably won't understand at all or will try to talk you out of what you think. But to have one or two key family members who can help with that is so pivotal.
The story she just told, because obviously when you're a level one like I am and you start to share with family that, hey, I'm on the autism spectrum, and they think, no, you're not.
Mhm.
Get that going. So
Everybody has something.
her mom was skeptical at first, and actually this event was one of the things that helped her understand. Now we do live
Mhm.
next door, by the way. We're about a quarter of a mile away. When I say I went home to get food, it wasn't
You didn't
a
drive
huge
2
deal,
hours back to the house.
but it was a moment that I think really helped her start to understand that this is a real thing. The
Mhm.
other thing is obviously the way I quantify this, because I like to quantify things, is this was one of the life hacks you actually gave us about the 1 + 1 = 3
Mhm.
and how we can be us individually and then we're a couple. This is one of the things that it doesn't bother us anymore. We understand that just because we're not together at every event for the extended period of time doesn't mean that we're not together.
Right.
And so it's been great. Ashley knows I have no expectation from her side. If she wants to stay with her family on a holiday until
Mhm.
midnight, that's fine. And then she doesn't get upset if I want to leave early. So it's been really great for us.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that 1 + 1 = 3 thing because so many couples, especially, fall into the trap of thinking that once we're married or once we're together in a relationship, we're supposed to just do everything together, especially social events. And if we aren't, there's something wrong with us. There's something wrong with our relationship. But in reality, we're all different human beings. We're just really different, and we're not gonna be the same. We're not gonna enjoy the same things. Sometimes we're not gonna have the same tolerance for things. And so to be able to recognize, hey, I can have my preferences and you can have yours, and we can totally love each other and respect each other as two separate human beings, but we can also have different needs to do things differently. And then our couple, that three, the 1 + 1 = 3, our couple is still okay. Our couple relationship is still fine. Okay. So these things were happening and it was baffling. So talk to me a little bit about how you came to suspect autism or that whole discovery process. How did that come about?
I'll try to keep it to a short story, but I actually have a really good friend of mine whose son is on the autism spectrum.
Hmm.
And he and I worked together for 7 years at our job. And there are a few times at work that I would get upset about certain things. And he just mentioned in passing one day, I think you might have Asperger's, which was what it was called back then.
Hmm.
And so that was one thing I remember a conversation happening, and I didn't think much of it. And then I have another friend that I work with, and she used to go see a comedian who would talk about her husband and call him left brain.
Oh, I know that comedian. I can't think of
Yeah.
her name, but I've been to her
Jeannie
show.
Robertson, I think it
That's
is.
right. Yeah, she's so funny.
So this person actually went to see Jeannie in concert. I guess you call it concert performance.
Yeah.
And they were selling little bracelets that said, "I'm with left brain." And so she bought one of those to send home to Ashley for her to wear. "I'm with left brain." And those little things just started sticking in my mind. And honestly, I always knew that, especially as far when it came to learning things, that I seemed to learn a little bit differently than other people. I
Mm,
could tell that in high school. People would talk about how they studied, and I was like, I don't study that way. I study a different way,
mhm.
things like that. But really, I guess it came to a point at Mother's Day in 2019. I'd been thinking about how all my siblings get together, all my family gets together, they're talking, there's a lot of commotion, and they're all very smart, very quick witted, and they'll throw things out. And I was sharing with Ashley once that when we all get together, I don't always understand what people are talking about, and I don't always get the sarcasm or the jokes or things like that.
Mhm.
And something happened during the get together. I made a comment to my sister. I don't always get what y'all are talking about. And she says, "We always knew you were probably on the autism spectrum." "What do you mean you knew? And what does that mean?" So
Right.
this was a Sunday. The very next day, I took one of these pre-assessment
Mhm.
autism quizzes, and it came back and said, "Hey, you might have some traits." I took a longer test. I don't think it was still the AQ-10 at that point, but something I found online.
Mhm.
And then the third thing I did was call you. And I remember
I
that.
remember.
And of course, after taking the AQ-10 actually multiple times, because sometimes I still doubt things, and that's how I found out. And then it was just that whole emotional roller coaster of, okay, what does this mean and how am I different and those things.
Yeah, I remember when you called me and we started talking about all of that. And so I was with you, both of you. I worked with you and then both of you together some. And I was with you through that process of emotionally processing what does this mean? And so it's been 4 or 5 years since that. So what were some of those initial reactions that you had?
Initially, it was a little confusion and a little denial. And then, of course, starting to read some more material, watch a few more videos, read a little more Temple Grandin, that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
and trying to figure this thing out. And then there was just back and forth for a while of, okay, this might be true. And then, no, it can't be. And those things always aligned with on the days I had plenty of spoons versus the days I didn't have plenty of spoons. Because
Mhm.
when I had plenty of spoons, I didn't feel autistic. I feel like I could handle things. And the
Mhm.
days I didn't, I realized how much I struggled. So that went
Mhm.
on for a while. There was also the struggle of denial by family when I would share with
Mhm.
them, and they would say, everybody's got a label and the usual things that get thrown out. Obviously, I struggle with imposter syndrome because if you're not Rain Man, then you must not be autistic.
That
So,
really was our generation's exposure to
yeah.
autism. That's what we thought autism was. And yeah, that didn't line up. That didn't align. So, what does this mean? Yeah. So even though your sister said was it a joke, you think, when she said that? Or
Actually, she was very serious, and she is also neurodivergent. She has ADHD.
okay.
And so she was serious about it. It was some of the other family members who were not quite so sure. So that's where I struggled too, because when you're doubting yourself and then the people you're close with are also casting some doubt, it can be difficult.
Yeah. And that's generally how it goes with family members. There are those who are maybe even more knowledgeable about neurodivergence and autism, ADHD, all of that, that are going to be more able to recognize and see, whereas there are going to be those who don't know anything about it. I certainly have looked deeper into my family because, my mother was diagnosed. And then once you have a family member diagnosed, then you start looking around at the family tree. And there are definitely people in my family where it's just obvious to me, but it's not a conversation I could even have with them. I know that they would not be in any way open to that conversation, but others have been. So, Ashley, what was that like for you when that idea first came on the scene?
For me, he also, one thing he did when he took the assessment, he sent it to me and asked me to take it like from his perspective. And it scored pretty high even there. But for me, I'd say it felt like one of those moments that just clicked
Mhm.
when I started reading about it, researching it. It made perfect sense to me. And I never doubted from that point, that is what we were dealing with. And
Right.
we had a lot of conversations because he would have a lot of the doubts and whatnot, but I never doubted through any of that. So we just have to talk through it.
Mhm.
And for me, it was a relief because it helped us just understand so many of the dynamics, like individually and relationship wise. I think I mentioned earlier, I feel crazy at some point, and I finally had, I'm not crazy and he's not crazy. And I know crazy is I hope that's not offensive.
But
I
no,
mean, that
it's
I
how a
say
lot of
that,
people
but
feel. It really is. So I
yeah,
think, yeah, it's relatable.
yeah, and just being able to understand, because as a neurotypical, until you start researching autism, you have absolutely no frame of reference that, oh, just because my face looks like I'm mad doesn't mean I am mad. We
Mhm.
have no idea that that is even possible.
What you described, there's actually a word for it. It's called the double empathy problem. You may have heard that before, but we talk a lot about cognitive empathy and theory of mind, which means we're usually referencing an autistic individual whose perspective and frame of reference is locked in as the one that everybody else also probably has too. And sometimes it's hard. And really, this is something that all of us can experience. We just went through a big political election here in the United States. And so just look at politics and you can see that people have trouble seeing other people's perspectives. And religion's the same way, hot, polarizing topics. But with neurodivergence, sometimes it's the same way because we have our own way of processing sensory input, language, just the way our thought process works. And the only frame of reference we have is our own. And so, Ashley, you're wearing glasses, and so do I. I use that analogy sometimes is that we don't know, we can't see until somebody puts a pair of glasses on us. We know what we're seeing, but we don't know that we're not seeing what everybody else is seeing. And so it really goes both ways that neurotypicals sometimes think that, oh, we can understand that our autistic partner has a different perspective. But even though we may know it, sometimes we just don't even realize how we're not able to comprehend it. And I'm glad you brought that up. Randy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
There's a lot, and there's no way to possibly cover everything. 5 years worth of data at this point.
Yeah.
The main things I wanted to share is so that things that we've learned as a couple in our
Hmm.
relationships, it's not just with us either. Like I say, it's with my family or my
Hmm.
kids, things like that. I think for me, I'll still call myself an Aspie. As an Aspie, I think one of the things that's been most helpful for me is because I grew up not really understanding how to behave. Of course, you learn that from watching other people and watching movies or whatever it is. And I think that I've always been fascinated by why people do the things that they do.
Mm.
And as the youngest of five kids, I would watch my siblings and how they interacted with mom and dad, mostly to find out what not to do. So I would see them get in trouble and I would say, okay, that's what you don't do in this situation. And that's how I learned things. And then movies, I was famous for just watching hours of movies and then being able to recall
Mm.
all the scenes and the interactions. And I would find myself mimicking a lot of the things that I saw in movies or a lot of things that they said.
Mm.
And now I know why. I was
Mhm.
trying to learn how to navigate. And I also found out that sometimes what they said in the movie was not the right thing. So
Right.
learned that the hard way.
So
But
I hear this from so many people, this studying thing, whereas for a neurotypical, it's what's called vicarious learning. So it's just incorporated the social learning, the way to behave or not. It's in the background. It's just being absorbed and soaked up like a sponge. Whereas for autistics, Aspies, I hear this all the time that it's more intentional. It's more of I study, I watch the movies. And a lot of people who are autistic, I know my ex-husband who's undiagnosed, but definitely autistic, has all these phrases and expressions that come from shows and movies that he uses. And now the whole family like knows them like by heart. That's a very common thing that I hear over and over again from autistic individuals is there's that intentional studying and learning versus it being more vicarious or not quite as intentional for neurotypicals. But I also want to just point out that you have these memories of really watching people trying to understand others. And you're unique to any of my other guests in that I knew you in high school and we were very good friends all the way through high school. And a lot of people think about autism or they think about autistic boys and they just think of this like really quirky weirdo and that's a myth. But they think of this like really quirky weirdo that's just like antisocial and just never interacts with anybody. But that's totally not the case. You were very involved. You played baseball. You were in the band. I remember we all hung out together and I don't have any memory of you like that. What are your memories like though, when you think back of high school and what do you remember about it in terms of how you felt around others?
Now that I guess I'm looking at it differently now, but I have replayed a lot of things, a lot of interactions, a lot of things I did, especially the things I remember that were embarrassing. I would think back and go, okay, I understand now a little bit more about one of the things that I had a lot of difficulty with that I didn't think too much about at the time because and I need to make sure I say this, I assumed that everybody was having the same struggles that I was having. I didn't know that I was different that way. And one of the things that was a struggle for me was honestly, it was the school day, the sensory overload from the get-go. And you're supposed to stay still and sit through hours and hours of class and have people talk to you. And this was supposed to be a way to learn. And I didn't learn that way. I learned better from reading books and teaching myself. And so just trying to learn the norm of I need to sit and behave and be still. And it's the lights and the noises. And I wanted to move around, but I couldn't.
You couldn't eat when you wanted.
Yeah, I couldn't eat when I wanted. So it was probably exhausted a lot in school. And so those are the kind of things I remember. And then I just remember, hey, I might want to be friends with this person, or I want to talk to this girl or whatever it is. And the only way I knew how to do that was to think about some movie I saw and say, now who's cool in this movie and how did they do it? And that didn't work out too well a lot of times.
That didn't work out too well. You know, what you just shared though about the way school is structured, I think is huge. And our education system is slowly catching on to that more, I would say, in elementary school, not quite as much in middle school, recognizing that kids learn differently and a lot of kids have sensory challenges like you just described. And it's also why a lot of kids really do so much better in online school or homeschool, especially. But there are pros and cons to that because then there aren't as many opportunities to be social and to practice social skills, depending on a lot of homeschool families get really involved in co-ops and that kind of thing. But it's like what you just described, the learning environment is more of a distraction. It's distracting you from learning versus facilitating learning. My mom was a teacher. Your mom was also in the school system. And so I know my mom has looked back even and said, wow, I can really see how we didn't do the best we could have with a lot of students. Okay, we're going to stop there for part one of my chat with Randall and Ashley, which, as you can already see, they have so many great things to add to this conversation. And in part two, there's so much more. So be sure and tune in for part two in a couple of weeks. See you then. That's a wrap for today's episode. Be sure to subscribe or follow the podcast so you won't miss any of these amazing interviews. And as always, if you're benefiting and enjoying this podcast, please give us a review. It really helps other people know that this podcast is really beneficial and worth listening to. Thanks for watching on YouTube or tuning in to your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget to visit me online at jodicarlton.com for more resources. I have assessment quizzes, educational articles, courses, and more. And if you have any questions, just reach out to my team at gethelp@jodicarlton.com. Until next time.